your flesh and blood.
And welcome to Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and it is a pleasure to come your way once again with a very special guest who is a returning guest, Patrick Lindley here on the program. Patrick,
Actually, it's Lindley, Lindley, but that's no big deal.
All right. We have Patrick Lindley here on the program. We're talking today with him, and we're going to continue our conversation that we kind of left the last time we were here. But we're going to open it up a little bit into a particular direction because, you know, folks, life has a way of really kind of twisting us around a little bit, and we're so easily distracted by things. Especially we'll say the younger set, you know, the young people who are, they're into their devices, they're into their phones and tablets and all of this kind of stuff. And they kind of forget about the real world. There's a beautiful television program, Patrick, that we just watched the finale of, and it was called Destination X. And the premise of it is that you have all of these people vying for. There's a prize of $250,000, $250,000. And what this program does is it takes them on a journey, primarily into Europe and maybe Northern Africa and so forth. And they wear these goggles. They're the virtual reality.
Oh, I like those. They're scary, but I like them.
Right.
Anyway.
But they wear them so they cannot see where the bus is taking them. Of course, the windows in the side of the bus are blocked out. But when they're allowed to come out of the bus, they're wearing the goggles until they switch the goggles off so that now it's like looking through glass. Then they can take them off. And there are clues given and so forth along the way. And there are no cell phones. There's no internet. There's no connectivity from that standpoint. And they're given clues along the way to find out where they are at that moment that will lead them to the final destination, which is the final destination X that the host has determined, before the program began. And of course, people are eliminated. Well, in spite of the fact that you can only have one winner, all of the people who end up being eliminated are very grateful for having been on the program, having traveled literally around the world, and just enjoying the experience. And that's one of the things that we're going to talk a little bit about is enjoying the experience of life. And I will tell you, and Patrick knows this because he's been to our present home as of this recording, and he sees what we're going through as far as having to gather up all of our belongings and move somewhere else. And the real challenge is where we're going to move to, because that hasn't been determined yet. We're hoping that it's going to be a place that we're trying to buy, but but it's still up in the air. However, we still have to pack. That still has to be done. So we're going to talk a little bit about those distractions and how we can maybe make that shift, Patrick, to stay focused, even though we have the devices, even though we have the connectivity. It's kind of like I can't even leave. I have to have my phone with me almost all the time, because I don't know if the radio station's going to get a hold of me, a programmer, a guest on the program such as yourself, the realtor, the renter, the landlord, the list goes on. And I need to be available in that respect. And yet there's a part of me that says, I have 48 hours of vacation time coming. I really need to find a way to take that. You know what I'm saying? And turn off the phone. Have you struggled at all with that level of connectivity and sort of forgetting that there are other human beings here on the planet that are trying to live a life, a fulfilling life, a thriving life?
every day I deal with those dilemmas. I suppose one of the ways that I find that I can deal with it best is when I pet a cat or a dog or watch birds, watch any creatures that are not human. I realize they don't care about AI. At least I don't think they do. They might react, or technology, but they might react to our stress level as we are dealing with the various opportunities, shall we say, of
Mm.
technology to improve our lives and the lives of everyone, all beings on the planet. I mean, that's the ideal vision of technology is to be a benefit for all sentient beings. Now, whether it is or not, that's another question. So I think spending time in nature, if it still exists wherever one lives, uh, spending time observing nature and obviously not just the benign aspects of nature, but cats catching lizards and playing with them, and dogs lunging at you when they want to jump on you and hump your leg, which is fine. But that's just what dogs and cats do, and
Mhm.
we have to be reminded that there are. I shouldn't say that we have to. We are reminded that other creatures on the planet also are intelligent and interactive, and they still want to interact with us regardless of what technological gadgets we've established or taken to heart or whatever. And the paradox is that one of the largest ways that I communicate with people, even in my own complex, my own community, we send each other cat and dog and bird and reptile clips every day, doing funny things or doing touching things or doing weird things. That's that has become just as important, I think, paradoxically, in our technological bubble that we all choose to live in, or we think that we have to live in just to survive or flourish or communicate with people.
Mhm.
And having said that, the opportunity to remind other people that there are other beings on the planet that we'd like to pay attention to because they certainly love paying attention to us
Yeah.
in in any context, whether it's adversarial or dominating or accommodating, because domestic pets, they're still wild and they revert to being wild in front of our eyes many times a day. But we have to be reminded, one, that we are animals just like they are,
Yeah.
and two, that they are worth paying attention to and cherishing and caring for in whatever way we feel that that's important. And nature preserves, uh, zoos maybe is not the best example because they're basically in prison, I suppose. Some people would say.
Mhm.
Uh, and and I just feel that as nature is encroached upon and is disappearing, I think it's helpful for us humans to keep in contact with it in whatever way that we can.
Oh, absolutely. You bring to mind just this morning, actually late last night or early this morning. We have three. I don't know that when you were here you saw the cats. We have three black cats, and they're all siblings, and
Hmm.
two male and one female. And one of the cats, one of the males, actually has white paws and a little big star on its chest, and then white whiskers. Um, but the female comes up onto the bed, and she comes up between my pillow and my wife's pillow and lays down to sleep with us. And I woke up this
Great.
morning around 3:30, 4 o'clock, and there she was. And I put my hand on her body and petted her a little bit. And then my wife, she kind of woke a little and did the same.
Hmm.
And it's like, and matter of fact, their birthdays are coming up on the 4th of September. They will
It's my brother Peter's birthday.
ah, well,
Yeah.
happy birthday to Peter too.
And
Um,
what are your cats? What are your names for your
Well,
cats?
the white pod male, his name is Edgar for Edgar Allan Poe. The black male is Dorian for Dorian Gray. and the female's name is Lilith. For the legend, the mythological and maybe literal, first wife of Adam,
See,
who
don't talk about much in contemporary biblical circles for some
yeah,
reason. I don't know
no,
why.
well, I think it's because from what I understand, and I haven't read a lot, but I've read enough to know that she was not created from Adam's rib.
Oh, that's
So
important.
she was
That's super important.
very independent, and apparently he didn't like that. So that's why
This is
woman
something
was,
eerily familiar, isn't it,
yeah,
Richard?
isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah,
So she was, Eve was created from Adam's rib, and now, of course, in today's modern society, is by some standards, not all, but some, is a little less than the
yeah,
male, you
yeah,
know.
yeah, absolutely. And so Lilith fans out in the audience, we applaud you. I don't know much about Lilith. I don't know where it is in Genesis, but I certainly tend to find out. Is it in Genesis clearly written?
It's not in Genesis at all. It is
Oh,
probably
okay.
in some of the apocryphal writings. So that's something that we would have to research. But nonetheless, the cats, they get along so well. They're beautiful, beautiful animals. And even some nights I'll be laying on my back sleeping and I'll wake up and all of a sudden all three of them are lying sleeping between my legs down by my feet
Yeah,
where I
familiar.
can't even move. I can't even move.
They
But
may
it's
have planned it that way. I mean, maybe.
I think so. I think so. But that's a beautiful thing. And of course, here where we live, and you've seen the area,
Yeah.
in the fall and winter and spring, and sometimes in the summer, we will see wildlife. For example, we have had deer, pregnant deer, and then deer with their offspring. And we've actually seen a couple of bucks up here, and so forth. And they'll come wandering into the space that we have, and then they'll eat some of the grass and so forth. And we just walk out on the screened-in porch there, and we just watch them. And sometimes we'll talk quietly to them. There is something about nature, and I will share with you a phrase. Love for your observations on this too. There's a phrase a statement that I really believe in, and it is this: that nature is our greatest teacher. Is it not?
Yeah, I agree with that. I suppose you could say there are people who are perennial optimists who will say that everything that happens to you in life, whether you perceive it as negative or positive or beneficial or harmful, is always a teacher. Sometimes the people that you dislike the most or like the least are the people that teach you the most about your own nature. I think it's valid. I mean, naturally, like anybody else, I like to have pleasant experiences more than unpleasant experiences, but
Hmm.
that's a subjective thing. I mean, this is something Yuval Noah Harari says. He's a professor of medieval military history at the University of Jerusalem. He's also one of the biggest experts on AI, and he will say that there is objective reality. A meteor hits the Earth. Uh, Whether you believe in meteors or not, that's an objective reality. If it does hit the Earth, you have to deal with it. Then there's subjective reality, which is your own feelings and bodily sensations, which are by nature subjective because they're common only to you. And then there's something that he calls intersubjective reality, which is stories is one. You and this is not to denigrate religion in any way, but stories, religions, all kinds of ideologies. These are have elements of both subjective and objective reality that are mixed
Hmm.
by their very nature. And it's very difficult to separate objective from subjective reality in something that's intersubjective. I know we're getting into the abstruse intellectual things. You see my bookcase in back of me. It's
Yes.
full of mostly music books. So I'm a musician. I don't pretend to be a philosopher or a politician or a psychologist. However, I do have, it reminds me of I've been in situations with committee meetings where somebody will say, "Look, I don't know anything about this subject," but then proceed to dictate what they think somebody should do in that circumstances on this committee.
Yeah.
And I think, isn't that an interesting? You give yourself an out in the beginning by saying, "Look, I don't really know what I'm talking about, but I'm going to go ahead and pontificate and tell you what to do anyway."
Yeah.
So then you say, "Should I pay attention to this person, or are they at least being honest enough to agree? Look, I don't have all the answers. I can only share my own experience, strength, and hope with you at the present moment, and you take it or leave it as you see fit." So anyway, the initial question that you asked me, I got off on the AI tangent to some extent, but no, the different kinds of realities, we
Hmm.
all have to. But we know that Buddhist psychologists, as far as I can tell, um, don't believe that we have an individual fixed personality. We're a grab bag of notions that we've inherited from our culture or some television program we say, Davy Crockett, king of the wild frontier. I mean, that's in my brain forever.
Yeah.
Fess Parker, he founded the Bacara, no, some hotel here in Santa Barbara area. Uh, he obviously was a good businessman because it's still flourishing many years after his death. But Fess Parker, Davy Crockett, these are all little memes in my brain that have still have an influence on me. Otherwise, I couldn't have sung a song to you just now. So for me, there are all kinds of things from television that I remember that just oh God, I don't even want to go through that because that'll take hours and hours of weird jingle time from our audience, which they may like. I don't know, but that's the one that comes to my mind immediately. It's the romanticization of the 19th century frontier mentality, manifest destiny, all that stuff. Which there are all these things that are connected to that song that have nothing to do with the tune itself or the words, but
Yeah.
it evokes all these notions and nostrums about what the world was like and what the world is or isn't like now. And for me, music is always a kind of a shorthand for all kinds of concepts that are completely unrelated, actually, in a logical sense. And that defines, since we've had radio, when you can just turn the dial to any station. How many stations on? When I was a little kid, we didn't have a TV till I was 7, so I would turn on the radio, or my parents would turn on the radio, and they'd flip the dials until they found something that they wanted. Now there were probably at least 25, I would guess, stations available in 1953, when I may have started to listen to radio consciously. And nowadays, of course, you have 500,000 stations available on any television, and plus podcasts. How many podcasts do you think there are in the world?
Oh, millions,
Millions.
millions, millions. You know,
So
it's
we have
incredible.
we have unlimited access to information. Now, Harari, when he talks, he said information is not the same as wisdom.
Aha.
Human beings can create machines that spew out endless amounts of information. But the question is, can they also be wise? We don't know yet. They're trying to program all that stuff, human emotions and feelings and things, into AI. They may succeed. I honestly don't know. I'm not a computer expert. Or
Yeah.
you certainly are a media expert because you deal with all these buttons every day. I don't. I mean, I do to some extent, but
Yeah. Well, one of the things I know, there are a lot of people that are concerned. I also know too, there's an astrophysicist. His name is Neil deGrasse Tyson.
yeah, I've watched his. I like his programs a lot.
Yeah, me too. And one of the things that he says is that AI will reach a level, and this was what he said maybe about 6 months ago in one of these videos I was watching, that AI will destroy the internet. And it's because AI, it's bad enough that we've had to deal with this concept, I'll call it, and it's even accusatory concept of fake news. Because then I say accusatory because you are labeling other human beings who are doing in many instances, I think it's a minority that are playing with the information, but true journalists, shall we say, who are doing their best to provide the public with accurate information to the best of their ability, but yet they're still labeled. The information is still labeled as fake news. And AI is going to make it even worse because now we have even seen videos that have popped up of certain individuals, prominent political, movie, entertainment, and so forth, and they are promoting this, that, and the other thing. They're saying this, that, and the other thing. And then the real person comes along in an interview and says, that was not me. I never said that. That was somebody who created that. So what will happen is, and I'm going to tell you that I've experienced this firsthand from the standpoint that my wife and I have nearly been scammed twice, once in June and once in July, that could have cost us close to $3,000 or more.
This happened to me as well.
Yeah. And so now people say, well, go on the internet and go ahead and Google this, that, or the other thing. And it's like, yeah, but how can I be sure? How can I trust?
That's
And the
it.
only way, for example, looking, for example, for people to help us to pack things up and load up this pod that we have. Um, uh, I could go online and look for these companies that do that. They have people that will come out here. They'll come into your house and they will just go to town. But how can I be sure that these people or this company is number one, legitimate? Number two, the people that would come to do this, they now know where we live. They know where all of our stuff is. And, there's the danger there. The other scam that we nearly lost $2,500 on, and I should have known this from the beginning, the individual who's claimed to be wanting to rent this particular house wanted a $2,500 deposit that would be refunded so that we could go in and tour. I should have known no renter charges you money to come and look at their place. Now there might be like a $30
Yeah.
charge for looking for your credit information, okay? Because that's what they do now. They didn't do that 20 years ago. But it's like, and I quote this often. There's a president of the United States who is quoted as saying, "Don't trust anything you read on the internet." That president was Abraham Lincoln, and that's a joke. But that's how far it's gone, Patrick. So it's not enough that we get distracted away from the true analog sentient beings, you, me, and the flora and the fauna.
Yes.
Then there are people who are, and I will give them this much credit. They're creative in their scamming. But why can't they be creative in doing something that's productive instead of destructive? Because
Well,
that to me is scamming is.
fortunately, there are many people who are doing proactive, positive things for other people and using technology. For instance, the community that I live in, we have a list of maybe 25, 30 people, maybe more, that if somebody needs to be driven to doctor's appointments or picked up from or anywhere, shopping, etc. There are a list of 25 people that any of us can call and say, look, I can't do it today. Can you help so and so? And with 25 people, there's always somebody available. See, I live in a retirement community. Some people don't drive anymore. They still have cars, but sometimes they let people drive their cars because it's easier for everybody under those circumstances. So I can only speak from where I live, and because it's a retirement community, one could be tempted on occasion to think that anybody who's over, I don't know, what age do you think, over 35 or something, is just a blip on somebody's radar screen in
Hmm.
terms of visibility, viable visibility vis-a-vis advertising or celebrity status or whatever. So all I can say is that from my own personal experience, I'm 78. I thought it was all going to be downhill after 60 because my culture basically saying, look, I am part of the youth culture like anybody else in the 21st century. I want to try to uh, have some kind of quality of life, whatever that means, until I exit the planet, whatever
Mhm.
that means. And if
Yeah.
I'm one of the rapture people, maybe I will be taken up with 144,000 other people directly into heaven.
Yeah.
That's a wonderful idea, but that's not very many people out of the total number of people on the planet.
Not at
So
all.
that's exclusionary right there. I'm not criticizing the rapture representatives of the various Christian religions. I imagine that Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, Taoism, they probably have equivalents. The heavenly beings who are in contact with those of us who are on Earth. So there's some kind of hierarchy of well, race. I can only talk about Catholicism really because that's how I was raised. In Catholicism, there is the church triumphant. That's people in church in heaven. The church suffering is people who are in purgatory where you're not bad enough. It's like reincarnation. You're not bad enough to go to hell, but you're going to heaven. And the church militant is the people who are in battling the evil one here on earth. So that's a hierarchy which is, it has certainly some merit to it. Whether it's everybody's belief system or not, I'm not in a position to say. All I know that it is the Catholic position,
Yeah.
the church triumphant, the church suffering, and the church militant.
Yeah.
So right there, maybe we don't want to go there because religious ideas are fine, but they're certainly, let's say, mutable depending on what culture you're in.
Yeah. Well,
Cross-culturally, there are plenty of things in common with religious belief systems which we could concentrate on.
sure. Well, first of all, I'm going to, for me and this program, I'm going to define religion as it was defined in the Bible. And true religion is taking care of the widows and the orphans, the people who need help. That is true religion. What I would like to shift into is more of a metaphysical or spiritual context in terms of humanity's humanity's existence. Now, it's spirituality or metaphysics, metaphysical aspects cover the gambit of philosophies. All right, even those that you have mentioned, whether they're within or without Christianity. And I've often thought of this concept of the soul, the soul of not just an individual, not just a community, such as where you live or where we live and so forth, or a town, a city, a state, a nation, but the soul of the planet, the soul of humanity, the 8.33 billion people who reside on this planet. And one of the aspects I've talked about, Patrick, is that if the good Lord had intended for us to live solitary lives, I would bet you there are more than enough Class M planets in the universe for each one of us to inhabit our own planet. But what is the reality? The reality is that right now, 8.33 billion people occupy this little dust speck spinning around in the universe. So that tells me, from a logical standpoint, that we're here to live and work and play and love together and help each other. And
That's cross-culturally too. I'm pretty sure.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. So that's kind of where I'd like for us to focus a little bit, because it always is going to take us back. In my opinion, it's going to take us back to the natural world. It's going to take us back there because that's where we live. We actually live. And despite the fact that you might live in a very congested place like New York City, or very urban place like the middle of Nebraska or other parts of the globe, you live in the natural world, and the question is, how connected are you to it? And that's, to me, a key for us, that we can use the technology in many, many ways, but we have to also balance it with staying connected with the natural world. And I'll tell you, it's been hard in these last 3 months. My wife and I have been dealing with this whole process, in spite of the fact that this is where we live. But we've taken some beautiful trips, for example, up to Lake Arrowhead. Oh my, what a gorgeous, gorgeous place to live, which is kind of what we're looking at right now. So, what about you? I mean, you live in a retirement community with a bunch of folks. You're very agile, if you will. You're mobile. You know, you drive and you do all these types of things. You're very energetic. You've got great energy and so forth. What is your what are your spiritual underpinnings, foundation, as it were? Not where you necessarily came from, but where are you today?
Today, I'm just grateful to be alive and breathing. I remember asking my Aunt Sally once, when I was 40 and she was in her 70s, I said, "What's it like being 70?" She said, "Frankly, I thank God every day that I'm alive, that I'm still alive and breathing." And that's one aspect of it. And the other, Thich Nhat Hanh, the famous Vietnamese sage, we can call him a sage. He's unfortunately passed away, but he basically said that one prescription he gave to people, maybe specifically in the West, maybe just in general, that smile more and enjoy your breathing. And I think, fortunately for us, mindfulness, which is it's not specifically a religious practice, although you could look at it that way. Mindfulness is simply being aware of the present moment, and and treasuring the present moment, and realizing by the time you've treasured the present moment, it's no longer the present. So that's the paradox, that when Einstein says that the past, present, and the future are all simultaneous, that has all kinds of interesting implications, because my my feeling is, since I was in my 20s, is that religion, science, and medicine have been getting closer and closer together. There are, neuroscientists who are discovering ancient practices of various religious systems which are beneficial to human beings from a biological standpoint. For instance, when neuroscientists have been studying, the people I read, medical doctor, whose name I've forgotten, but Mark David Waldman is a neuroscientist who used to be a graphic artist. He writes a column in Science of Mind magazine called Spirituality and Science and Spirituality, and Dr. Andrew Newberg. Anyway, these are neuroscientists that I've been reading for a long time. They posit that cross-culturally, when neuroscientists have attached electrodes to people's brains from different faith traditions, nuns, trying to get closer to Jesus in every way, atheists who are contemplating big questions like solving world peace and world hunger, Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, transcendental meditation devotees who are practicing meditation, Jewish weddings in the Jewish tradition, they're dancing the hora during a wedding, and men dance with men in Israel and in Hasidic Jewish tradition, and women dance with women. I think they also dance together. I don't know, but dancing and singing, the most natural forms of human expression from the time you're born, practically, those are part of all religious traditions. And anyway, when the electrodes are attached to the brains of these people in the various faith traditions, there are certain parts of the brain that light up cross-culturally, so that there are commonalities in the world religious traditions which have nothing to do with dogma or that kind of thing, they're these are things that happen in the human brain biologically that they can measure. One of the most important people I've come across in the last few years is a man named John Kabat-Zinn, who was a molecular biologist, studied that at MIT. And when he started meditating, or praying or contemplating, you can call it anything you want, but when he started studying that in the 70s, science didn't see fit to study consciousness scientifically. But now, of course, they do. John Kabat-Zinn founded an organization called the Mind Body Wellness Institute that removed all the Buddhist accretions from meditation, and to simplify it and streamline it for the American psyche, you could say, because Americans are not fond of being told what to think and what to do, even though they are told what to think and what to do by advertising and media. But nevertheless, as far as I remember, one of the hallmarks of the American psyche from the beginning was that we have more choices than we were led to expect in the countries that we fled from to get a certain amount of freedom that we didn't feel we had back in the old country, whatever that might mean. Anyway, I'm going on and on. I'm more interested being a Californian. Californians are expected to be culturally eclectic. And I think that because California is this fourth or fifth or sixth largest economy in the world, as if it were a separate country, and because of our proximity to the Pacific Rim, we have certain attitudes that are, different than that from the East Coast. I say that because I was recently on the East Coast for a family funeral, and it was I lived on the East Coast for 10 years, and which reminds me, I hope at some point in our conversation we will talk about music, because I feel that in a sense I had a similar reaction years ago when I saw Edward Asnar, who became Asnar the actor, who was on whatever that program he was on,
Mary Tyler
Moore.
Mm-hmm.
All of a sudden, he was making political pronouncements, and people said, "Well," I said, "what qualification does Edward Asnar have to make political pronouncements?" And then I realized, well, celebrities are encouraged to talk about anything as if they were authorities on it. So, in a way, I'd almost like to stop talking about metaphysics from my standpoint, because it's not my field. My field is music.
I understand.
But nevertheless, we've spent a great deal of time now talking about this. It's been
about 35, 40 minutes.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I'm eclectic by nature in many ways, culturally, metaphysically, certainly musically. And a wonderful woman, I'll never forget it. Her name was Lorette Goldberg. She was the founder of the San Francisco Baroque Orchestra. She was from Chicago, I believe. She was an incredible musician. I went to her and I had made some CDs based on the Bach-Goldberg variation chord progression. And I made 2 CDs back. This was years ago, 30 some years ago. Anyway, she very kindly, I played for her. I played her my CDs, and she was just wonderful to me. And she refused to take any money. I took a long lesson with her. She said, "No, I'm not going to charge you." She was a very generous woman. And she said to me, I said to her at one point, I have been forced by circumstances to be eclectic in terms of my musical pursuits. And she stopped me right there. She said, "Wait a minute." She said, she said, "I'd like to express something to you that I believe is true for you." She says, "You are eclectic." She says, "You never again have to apologize for being eclectic, because that's your nature. If that's your nature, why should you apologize to anyone?" That was I'd say that was one of the most liberating things that anybody has ever said to me, because all of a sudden I felt this weight off my shoulders just drop away. And I said, "You mean I've been fighting a battle that I don't have to fight to myself?" And I'll never forget it. She passed away a few years ago, but she was just a marvelous human being, and she she relieved me of a burden that had tortured me literally for decades.
Mm.
I don't have to go into how, because it doesn't matter. The point is, I haven't been tortured since she told me that wonderful thing. So, and I've had other key figures in my life, great musical teachers. Tell you about another one. Her name was Eva Wainless. She was, her parents were killed in Auschwitz. She was there. She survived, fortunately, not for her parents, but for herself. And she had a daughter that was born, I think, in the camps or shortly after she got out of the camps. And she told me something that was, she said, if there is a God, she said, and I do believe that there is, she said, the only sin that I can conceive of or that I know anything about is not fulfilling your destiny. And that was also one of the most profound, open-ended things that any teacher of mine has ever said. And, you know, she said, you could be a really great musician. She said, but do it now. She said, don't wait to do it in 5 years. She said, do it right this minute. This is what George Balanchine, the famous choreographer, said. He was a man who, during this First World War, maybe between the four World Wars, developed tuberculosis. He was in a sanitarium in Switzerland. He only had one lung. So, from what I know in the dance world, I know a lot of people in the dance world because I worked in it for many years. He said he never got angry with anybody. He just didn't have the energy. So he would just sort of throw up his hands and walk away. He never screamed at anybody. He was always kind, and he saw every performance of the New York City Ballet pretty much from the wings. That was his life, and he would say to people in rehearsal, he said, "Don't mark during rehearsal. In other words, don't use only half your energy and save it for the performance." He says, "Do it now." Do it this very moment, just like Ava said to me. She said, become a good musician now. Don't wait. And consequently, living in the present moment has become, mindfulness has become a very important thing in all levels of society. Fortunately for us, I mean, CEOs of big, Fortune 500 companies have mindfulness training all the time. So the consciousness has been raised. I would like to believe, and therefore I would like to believe that this is true. I believe that it should be true, and I would try to do my best to implement it, that we are entering, hopefully, a new era of human consciousness, of evolution of human consciousness. And there are people who are resisting it. There are people who know that the human consciousness is already evolving from, a less skillful place to a more skillful place. There are more people, certainly in America, that are becoming conscious of being mindful. Now that's been associated with Eastern religions, but it's just a psychological mindset more than it is a religion.
Right,
I would
right.
say. And
Well,
being mindful is living in the present moment is one of the few refuges, paradoxically, that we have.
yeah.
Okay, I said I
And,
wasn't going to talk about metaphysics anymore, and here I'm blabbering about it. So,
well, I will add just one small, short little thing, and that is this: that no one is being forced to do anything. However, the raising of the consciousness of humanity is like a river. You can do everything you can to try to block it, divert it, dam it up, but it will eventually find the path of least resistance, whether you like it or not. And so there is a certain element of, yes, you have a choice. You can choose to join or you can choose to fight, but you will be carried along kicking and screaming. We're not going to do any kicking and screaming on this program. We're going to continue our conversation with Patrick Lindley here on Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan along with Patrick Lindley, and we're going to switch gears here a little bit. We're going to talk a bit about music because in an interview that I did with my parents 10 years ago on this program, we talked about music and why to them it was so important and so important to make it a part of our lives. They never pushed any particular genre, although we knew the music they liked listening to, and it was great to listen to. But they wanted us to know that it was out there, that it was important to them. That's why they wanted to share it with us, and that it can make a huge difference. And now I'm sitting here in my studio with what's left, with my record collection, vinyl record collection, not to mention everything I have digitally. And now I've got to decide, am I going to take all these albums with me or am I going to give them away?
I've been there. I've
And
been
my,
there.
yeah.
Yeah.
And my wife, she says, no, don't give them all away. Go through them. And I said, yeah, but that takes time. I got to sift through them, but I'll figure that out. But nonetheless, um, music is for many of us, and you in particular, uh, it's core. It's the core of your being, of your existence. Would you categorize it that way?
Yes, I tell people if they ask me that music was my first mode of communication with with the cosmos. Singing and dancing specifically, because I from the time I was little, I moved to any kind of music that I heard. That's just what I did, and that's what all children basically do. And I was whistling from a very early age. Tunes that I heard on the radio or that my parents would play on recordings or that my parents played on the piano. My uncle lived with us when I was a child. He was a concert pianist. His name was Howard Wells, and he was a conductor, composer. He conducted the Met Touring Company. He lived in Europe. He was an incredible musician, taught at UCLA, at UCSD, and Berkeley. He was a stellar musician and a wonderful mentor of mine. And he, he was a living example of somebody who just lived, ate, and breathed music. He was also a bishop. He was a member of a branch of the Catholic Church called the Nestorian branch. So he was a bishop of the Nestorian
Hmm.
branch of Catholicism. His name was Bishop Alexis. He took it very seriously, and he was a wonderful human being. Everybody loved him. He passed away, unfortunately, maybe, I don't know, 10 years ago now. It's hard to keep track of those things, but I've been fortunate. I mentioned three big mentors, Laurette Goldberg and Ava Wainless and my uncle, Howard Wells. I studied with a Russian piano teacher named Nadia Kibort, Kibort. She was Russian, and she was an incredible teacher. So I've been lucky enough to have wonderful mentors in music. I studied with a great harpsichordist named Gustav Leonhardt, who was from Holland, and studied with Nadia Boulanger in Paris. But again, those are all, I'm mentioning that because they taught me incredibly valuable things that have allowed me the privilege of remaining a musician all my life. So it's important to give, credit where credit is due. I studied with two wonderful teachers at New England Conservatory, three, Helen Keeney, Daniel Pinkham, and Mireille Lagacé from Canada. And all three of them were incredibly important to me. So anyway, that was a long, laborious answer to a very short question, but I tend to talk continuously, which is, I suppose, why I'm on the show, because I like to talk.
Well, that's and I do too, and of course, sometimes my questions can be elongated as well. But one of the things I find fascinating is the diversity, not just here in this country, in regards to music, but around the world, and in particular, what I was talking with a good friend of mine, Jonathan Goldman, down in San Diego, and he and I we get together every February to promote the World Sound Healing Day on February 14th. And he's written a number of books. He wrote one on humming and so forth, and he deals very much in the vibrations and tones and so forth. And I said, here in the West, We have what is called the scales, and then we have the octaves. There are 8 notes, and then there's sharps and flats and so forth. But there's one in particular that's not of the West that I find so fascinating. I don't know how much you know about it and would be able to expound, and that is the Indian ragas that is not confined to the 8 notes and the octaves and so forth. It's just, and when you listen to Indian music in particular, but then there's also Arabic music, music from the Middle East in particular, and even music that I've heard, that would be attributed to Jewish composers and so forth and so on. So I find it fascinating how I'm always curious about instruments too. I was like, who who came up with the idea of this instrument or that one or what have you, whether it's the violin or it's this one kind of drum that they play in Africa or the stringed instruments that they play in India. Um, what instruments do you play, and have you ever researched the invention, if you will, of that particular instrument?
Yes, I have. I mean, I've been involved in historical musicology most of my adult life. I played the harpsichord, clavichord, organ, piano, synthesizer, celeste, anything with a keyboard. I also play Native American flute. I have one here. In fact, now if I were to play something on the keyboard or play the flute, would it go over or would it not?
I don't know that we have our Zoom set up to do that, so we'll have to pass on.
Oh, okay. All right.
But we will, in the audio and video portions of this program, between the segments, we will be featuring some of the music that you've created.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Only thing I can explain, for instance, the voice does it very easily. If I go, so the conventional chromatic scale used in the West is A, A sharp, B, C, C sharp, D, D sharp, E, F, F sharp, G, G sharp, A. That's 12 tones between A and G sharp. That's the chromatic scale. I think we talked about this before.
a little
The
bit.
diatonic scale, which is across the tones, uses some of those notes and leaves some other notes. So you go A, B, C, D, E, F, G. That's in 7 tones,
Hmm.
which resolves to A. And it's an ascending scale. So the tendency with the human voice is to get louder as you get higher. And most instruments are designed after the human voice so that you have to you have to breathe harder into a flute or a trumpet to
Hmm.
make a higher sound than a lower sound. So if I go A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A. Now, I don't have a high A because I'm only a baritone or a bass.
Right, right.
A, but tenors can go up to C. Now, I can't sing a high C very well. It sounds horrible, but I can sing a low, down to F, which doesn't sound very good either. But so my range is from F to F. That's my usable range as a singer. Now, if I'm really in practice, I can sing reasonably beautiful notes from that low F to F. But in the middle range, I'm better. But the more pressure you're using, the more breath you're pushing through.
Yeah.
All the woodwind and brass instruments were designed to mimic the human voice.
Hmm.
I'd say that I could say that probably wind instruments and brass instruments are more a natural reflection of the human voice. As string instruments, sawing, or percussion instruments, beating, or they're also trying to imitate certain aspects of the human voice. But then there's just rhythm.
Yeah. I
Can
find
you
it.
hear that when I'm doing it?
No,
Oh, okay.
no.
You could hear me singing though.
I could hear you singing, but
Oh, okay. All right.
and that's what's interesting too is that
So I'm a singer as well as a keyboard player.
yeah, and it's interesting too, and we want to share music in this fashion, and then there's the technology that we have today that doesn't let us do it. Now, if we were in open air on a stage or in a studio, yeah, we could certainly play the music, but for whatever reason, and obviously there are some some technical things that need to be done within the software to
Right.
open that up, because I know I've watched videos of people playing instruments. So it is possible. We just have to figure that out. But music is such an important part of our lives. And I would say that it's an important part of our lives at all times. When we're happy, when we're sad, when we're excited, when we're depressed. A lot of times, and I will say that my wife and I have been going through a roller coaster of emotions over these last 3 or 4 months, that it's important, and this is where music, I think, really can benefit us, for us to go ahead and go through those emotions. Don't avoid them. Don't try to go around them or under or over. Go through them, because it's the only way that you're going to then let those go, reach a new place within yourself where, and I'm going to use this example. Sunday, you and your friend showed up and you shared information based upon your observations. All right. And then you went on your way. Well, that information hit us. Okay. It was our choice to feel the way we did. Understand that. Appreciated the information, but it sent us into a tailspin. In that, we crashed on the bed. We were exhausted. We were frustrated, and on and on and on. And we just laid there holding hands. We talked a little bit, and then we began the process once we worked through that, realizing we've reached the bottom here. So now it's time to rise up. So we started to do some mental processing. What do we really, really need? And we would list something. No, we don't need that. Then number two. No. Number three. Yeah, I really want to keep that. And so we went down this list, and it was only maybe 8 or 10 long. So then another friend shows up around 9 o'clock, and his energy was such that it helped both of us to shift and continue to rise, to then begin the process of continuing the process that we had already started. And we got a lot done. Still a lot to do, but nonetheless. And in a manner of speaking, we began to experience a little inspiration, so to speak, in terms of what we're doing and how we're doing it, and so forth. And and here we are, a day or so later, and it's just, this is life. This is it. But music can facilitate the moving through those different emotions. And sometimes you don't want to, because you like feeling excited and happy and joyous and blissful and so forth. It's the other stuff that we don't necessarily like to stay in. Do you use music in that fashion in your personal life to work through things like that?
Every day, pretty much all day. I have a constant, I have a list of hundreds and hundreds of pieces of music that I use to change specific emotional states to other emotional states or psychological states. And because I've played literally hundreds and hundreds of funerals and hundreds of weddings in my life, and hundreds of concerts, I use music as consciousness changing, or I won't say raising necessarily, because um, for me, music is a non-specific language that can express things that I'm not able to express verbally, particularly. Uh, and yes, in other words, the long answer to a short question is yes, I use it every day in that way, constantly. And both when I'm hired to play music for other people that they want me to play or that they expect me to learn, and music that I decide to use for my own purposes in my own personal life and in the music that I write. So I think music, I mean, I try to express every possible human state of emotional and psychological existence through music. I filter it through the 12 tones of and the other tones of the non-Western scale, the quarter. For instance, to go back to the voice, if you have between C and C sharp, if I were to slide up, C, I'm singing about 4 or 5 tones between C and C sharp. C, between those, that the smallest interval in Western music between C and C sharp, or A sharp. There are an infinite number of possible tones that you could perceive in between A and A sharp, or C and C sharp.
Mm.
So Indian music and Arabic music use quarter tones, so they divide C and C sharp into basically 4 tones instead of
Mm.
only 2. It's
Mm.
doubled. But there are composers and instrument makers like Harry Partch, who was American, who divided the normal 12 semitone Western octave into 48 tones. And he built a keyboard that there were between C and C sharp, there were at least 40 or 30 uh, tiny gradations from they're mathematically divided that one little semitone into 45 uh, separate little degrees. Now, whether we can perceive that, it's a little bit like whether we can perceive we don't perceive the entire visual spectrum, color spectrum.
Right.
We only perceive a very small percentage of the visual color spectrum.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing auditorily. We are we're limited physical beings. We are limited to what our ears can hear, what our eyes can see. But the truth is that there are an infinite gradation of subtleties in both the visual field and the oral field that we don't really have access to unless we train ourselves. And that's something that I suppose AI could train us to be to be more sensitive to these very subtle vibrations and sounds that we're not used to perceiving.
Exactly. We're talking with Patrick Lindley, and we're talking about music and sound and how it impacts our lives, how it actually facilitates us moving forward through the various things that we go through as we go through this life here on Tell Me Your Story. I'm Reverend Dr. D. Richard Dugan, and we're talking with Patrick Lindley. And Patrick, before we wrap things up here, and it's amazing how fast the time flies sometimes. Um,
Absolutely.
there's also another aspect because and you actually just touched upon it that I want to dive into for just a few moments, and then we'll wrap things up. You talked, of course, about the limited spectrum that we can see. Okay. However, there are those who can feel, shall we say, the energy of color. All right.
Yes.
And they will choose to, let's just say, wear particular colors. They will, yes, indeed. You've got,
I can't know if you can see that there. That it's
yeah,
turquoise at the bottom and fluorescent yellow green on top.
exactly.
Those are healing colors for me.
For you,
Yeah.
exactly. And everybody has to find their own,
Right.
and that requires one to what we talk about on this program. Trust. I love that. That's beautiful shirt right there. Trust their intuition.
Yes.
That still small voice. And there's a technique called kinesiology that I was taught. Oh my God, over 40 years ago. That the muscle testing was another name for it. And you've got more
Mhm.
examples of the different colors. And it's one of those things where there was a period of time in my youth when I wore brown, mostly brown tones. It was really Very interesting. And nowadays, I wear the majority of what I wear. I wear a black T-shirt, blue jeans, and and then of course sneakers and what have you. Not so close. If you keep it further away, we can see
Oh,
the.
okay,
There
better.
you go. There you go. Yeah,
This
very
is the
good.
same photograph that's been morphed by this thing called Prisma, Prisma. It takes any photograph and makes 300 different painting styles out of it.
Oh my heavens, that's
It's a
incredible.
lot of fun.
Yeah, back up just a touch on that one. There we go. There you go. Yeah, that's amazing. That is absolutely amazing. It's
It
beautiful.
is. It's absolutely incredible. I've done millions of photographs with Prisma, Prisma. It's a free app. Yeah, I think it's $1, $2 a month or something. It's
Yeah,
definitely worth it.
yeah.
So,
But when you, shall we say, decorate your abode, or when you go somewhere to, and we've lost your video, but I'm going to continue. But you go somewhere and the color of the room is a particular way, or there have been studies that show that, for example, bars, restaurants, and so forth, that specifically bars and lounges, pubs, and so forth. You want to really emphasize red because apparently that makes people thirsty, sort of a subliminal
oh,
thing.
interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So, and then there are people who will not drive certain colors of cars, that kind of thing,
Right,
and so on and so
right.
forth. Talk to us a little bit about your experiences with color, whether it's what you wear or maybe even some places that you really like going and other places you really don't like, and sometimes it's because of that aspect of the ambiance.
I think everybody has the privilege of developing their own color coding system depending upon your preferences. For instance, at night, I have very soft blue and green lights, which combine into sort of turquoise. I'm extremely fond of turquoise. I find blue and green tranquilizing colors. Red and orange are energizing, but I don't often wear the orange. I wear more. Yellow I like a great deal. That's energizing too. But red, I kind of stay away from red. Sometimes I'll wear. I like black because that absorbs all the colors. Sometimes I wear all black, depending on if I want to emphasize authority or not. This is one of the things that the dance teachers that I work with, a great many of them wear black uh, because it symbolizes to them a certain degree of authority. Now, there's some incredibly authoritative, wonderful teachers who wear all kinds of peculiar colors in combination with each other. I watch a great deal of Amazon birds from the rainforest, which are, very strange combinations of colors that don't seem to go together. But so I think everybody has to make up their own color-coded psychological profile, if you will. And I definitely find that if I want to project a certain psychological mood, I consult my mental color code and say, well, I better wear this shirt with those pants and that shoes because that's the feeling tone that I want to project. Now, whether somebody else has the same reaction is I won't know that until they comment on it. Maybe they won't comment on it at all. So does that make it clear to you what my own attitude towards that is?
Oh
Because
yeah,
then
absolutely.
then there's something called synesthesia, which some composers like Alexander Scriabin had.
I
Go-
have it.
Oh, you do? Well, then it's quite common.
Yeah.
They associate they're cross-wired to associate certain tones with certain colors.
Hmm.
And in fact, Scriabin wrote a piece called Prometheus, which had a color organ, it had a big screen. This was back early in the early part of the 20th century. He had a color organ, and depending on the tones that were played by the piano and the orchestra, this sort of symphony of colors, if you were projected on this big screen. Olivier Messiaen, one of the greatest French composers of the 20th century, also had synesthesia. So did Rimsky-Korsakov, the composer of Scheherazade. They would write about their color vocabularies that are mixed with their tonal palette. So synesthesia is actually quite common in all human cultures. It's not just limited to Western music.
Mm,
Um, and but again, there's so many possibilities of hooking up the two systems that it's not exactly an exact science. It's an art. I suppose like anything else, like cuisine or obviously painting, and these are all subjective uh, uh, palettes that become, I don't know, become standardized in different cultures in different ways. I mean, I think the Japanese, if I'm not mistaken, they use black for weddings and white for funerals. And
yeah.
it's just the opposite for the West. I could be slightly off there, but I think that's the case. So why did that happen in Japan that it was reversed of the way it happens in our culture? I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
You have
It's
to ask the
fascinating.
Japanese.
Yeah, it's fascinating. My synesthesia is more along the lines of numbers and letters, and I see, for example, if you were to lay out the months of the year, each month, because of the letters that it uses in our alphabet, each letter in the alphabet has a different color. And so when you put the colors together, it gives that month name a hue to it, and so forth. And same thing with numbers, dates, and so forth and so on. So it's really fascinating, and I've been that way all my life, and I've always thought it was kind of cool in that respect as well. What also is very cool is our conversation with Patrick Lindley as we continue here on Tell Me Your Story. Patrick, I wanted to first of all thank you so much for sharing here on the program. And you know, we've gone a lot of different ways, and that's kind of what the universe does. They take us on an interesting path, and I'm trying to keep that in mind as my wife and I are going on our interesting path. But thank you so much for sharing your insights, and I really do believe we could, connect again and have further conversations about some of these things as well.
Well, that would be wonderful. And now I want to do something that I said I was going to do. I want to give a shout out to my musician friends, Michael Luckman, who's been very supportive of my abilities, and also Dennis Berger, lots and lots of people. Those and also Ken Cohen. These are people that I hope will get a lot more visibility in the musical world. As soon as possible because they're people that I believe in, and I could name about 50 other people, but this is not the Academy Awards, and I'm not receiving an Academy Award, although I wouldn't mind, or an Emmy or a Grammy or something. I want to thank everybody, my hairdresser and my tax accountant and my personal trainer and whatever.
Yeah. Well,
Anyway, I don't mean to go on and on because
Well, the beauty of it is that you and I, we are beholden to thousands and thousands of people for
yes,
where
fortunately,
we are today. And I think that's really important to give that gratitude to
absolutely.
those folks, those accolades. So I know they appreciate it, as do I.
Mm,
I do want to ask you three final questions before we
yes,
wrap up. But before I do, I want to thank you for listening to and watching Tell Me Your Story New Paradigms for a New World, where we're giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday mornings at 1 a.m., Wednesdays at 9 a.m., and Monday through Friday from 8 to 9 a.m. Streaming live at all those times at richarddugan.com. We're on SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, Blueberry, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, and YouTube, where you can watch these conversations and look at all of the colorful aspects of our very special guest, Patrick Lindley. We also hope that you will subscribe and click notification. And we also hope you'll go to Amazon.com to pick up a copy of my book, which is Choices 5 Steps for Life. It's available in hardcover, paperback, as well as Kindle with Audible to be released this month. And we are also hoping that you will leave us a tip. Our tip jar is called PayPal. And if you go to richarddugan.com, there are links to Amazon.com and to PayPal. And finally, we hope that you'll take time during this, the decade of perfect vision, to spend some time going within to the peaceful, quiet, still, calm place. And I know I need to be doing that more these days and listen to that still, small voice. And with all that being said, we go to our final three questions for a very special guest. The first of those is, who is Patrick Lindley?
Whoever, I'm a grab bag of notions that I can't possibly tabulate in the time allotted. So my self-perception is colored by all kinds of things that I don't have time to go into. That's about all I can say.
Okay. What gets you up in the morning?
Um, Music. The first thing I do is turn on my keyboard and play something that I've done the night before, or turn on my smartphone and play something that I've recorded the night before. My synthesizer also records as well as my smartphone, so I toggle between those two, and then I decide this one I like, this one I can do better, and then often I'll just record a new version of whatever I've done the night before. So that's basically what I do every day.
Okay. And finally, what was your best day?
Today.
Wonderful. Well, Patrick, thank you again. This has been a joy. I really appreciate your being on the program as well as your support. Sometimes moral support can be just as valuable as literal physical support. So thank you so much for being a part of
Oh,
the
you're
work
very
we're doing
welcome.
here.
That's
And
great.
again,
I really enjoyed it myself.
and I really thank you folks for being a part of what we're doing here by tuning in. And we hope that you will join us on our next broadcast, podcast, videocast. And until then, love to Lal. Jeanette, I'm still listening. Dad, continue to be happy. Smokey, I'll see you on the other side. Mike, thanks for being in my life and letting me be in yours. And to my dear friend Zorro, aho, aho.